Welcome, Rock and Metal Guardians. I hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves. I'm Dane, host of the channel, and welcome to my newest video, as you can see from behind me, called The 30 Musicians Who Inspired Me the Most. So let's go ahead and jump right in. These are the ultimate for me, I'll say. And let me say this regarding what I mean by inspiration. Could be influence, kind of two different sides of the same coin. So a little bit by inspiration, or a lot rather, is, but not too much, is artists and musicians who've inspired me to want to play music. Meaningful lyrics is next. The music itself, of course, is the most important. Wanting to explore, seek similar music, also experiment, break out, try new things. You'll see that today. Inspired me to write poetry, songwriting on their end, right, that kind of thing. Arrangement, again, all about inspiring and influencing. Those different qualities of inspiring and influencing. Production and engineering, I'm not into that, but I know how important it is, and so listening to an album that is super or amazingly engineered or produced is inspiring in so many ways. Personal struggles of some artists. How they're a mentor. Another one is that how they're a mentor for band members who go off on their own. I'll talk about that soon enough. The artist or musician in question speaks to you in some way, or helped you with getting through your own struggles. Again, I'll talk about that as well. And the link to memory, because certain albums, I listen to them and it's like I'm a certain age all over again. I'll talk about that as well. Help me be creative. Help me write in a journal. Help me write poetry. Help me, again, coming back full circle to the first one, wanting to play music itself. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in with number 30. This is not necessarily someone who's a household name, but he's definitely number 30. Michael Gira of Swans. And the beauty of discovering Swans, thanks to my brother-in-law years and years ago, was he told me, hey, if you like Godflesh, you got to check them out. I did. I was like, wow, blown away. I like them way much more than I like Godflesh. Godflesh, I like 3 or 4 albums, and that's it. I like not everything by Swans, but most of what they have. There's maybe 3 or 4 albums in their whole huge discography that I don't like. So this is a band I'm obsessed with. And Michael Gira, that's how he pronounces it, essentially being the band leader, and just an amazing talent all around. So as far as avant-garde music goes, this is definitely one of my favorites. Probably number 2 all around. I'd have to think about that. There's a video, right? But Michael Gira is just so wonderful. His skill set to play the guitar, whether electric, acoustic, his voice is not for everyone, but I just love his creative nuances and textures. And if you're not familiar with Swans, I would start with their earlier stuff, that Godflesh period, where they're super heavy, but not in a heavy metal sense, although there's moments of that. So when I say Godflesh, it's got more Godflesh-like sounding. And somewhere there is an article, or someone has said about how their concerts were so loud that people would literally, have earaches and feel nauseated and stuff like that, which is good and bad, right? But it speaks to the character of their loud, at least their early catalog is, but at the same time possesses a grit, a finesse, a nuance, or nuances that are just layered with textures. Again, not for everyone, but if you're looking to try something new, I would start with their first couple albums. Look up the discography, and then I would venture into some middle stuff like Great Annihilator, that sort of thing. So anyway, number 30, Michael Gira. All right, number 29, Steve Hackett of Genesis, and now solo for a long, long time, and super inspiring. It's super inspiring because of his guitar chops and his humility and his willingness to break free from Genesis, despite the fact that there's a certain clout that goes had he stayed in Genesis, willing to, hey, let's go solo and let me do my own thing, because let's face it, in Genesis, I believe he was not given his due. A lot of stuff rejected by the other members of the band, especially Tony Banks is my understanding, and then hypocritically or ironically or both, after he puts out his first solo album, Voyage of the Acolyte, Banks gets upset. Well, what did you expect? He was going to, he's still with the band at this point, but again, he breaks free eventually. So I'm inspired by the fact that Steve Hackett has an amazing talent on guitar and his willingness to experiment, break off from the band that was his bread and butter and try something different and new and fresh, and yet bringing that Genesis quality in part to the table. He's been doing that for a while now with his live material, going back to Genesis tracks, and I'm loving one of my favorite tracks of all time is, it's quite old now, oldish, and when John Wetton was still alive, he had John Wetton come in and perform on vocals a version of Fifth of Firth, and it's amazing. I forget the CD that's on. I have it in MP3 format that a friend gave to me, but it's just fabulous. So Steve Hackett's chops again are just phenomenal. I love his spirit, his ability to, hey, I have to be on my own and be allowed to roam free and be the creative, because he was being held back. So I have to respect him for wanting to be his own person musically, artistically. There's something to be said about that. All right, so that was 29. Number 28 is Al Cisneros of Sleep. I saw them live, and boy, talk about, love that bass that he has. It's an expensive bass. I don't own that. It's about $4,000, but I digress. What Al did for me personally, inspire me, was to break into new ground as someone who plays the bass, to try new things. This doom style at one point was new to me. Am I a master like he is? Absolutely not. But it's music I go to all the time. I'm obsessed with Sleep, especially all the nuances of what he does, what Matt Pike does, and what the drummer does. Sorry, I forgot his name, but just an amazing trio, and what a bass player, if you ask me. As far as doom metal goes, they're one of the best, top 2, top 3 of all time. So thanks, Al, for the super inspiration you've given me to be creative on my own. All right, speaking of inspiration to be creative on your own, number 27 is John Wetton, who I just mentioned, and of King Crimson. There's a picture of him, of course, wearing a King Crimson t-shirt when he was with the band. Vocally, amazing. If you're new to King Crimson or not familiar, I would start with the song Starless. The vocals there is just a hint of what's to come. Check out Book of Saturday, Exiles on Lark's Tongues and Aspic. Again, super inspirational for me as a bass player, as someone who loves a good soft-spoken vocal. You have to be in the mood for that, but just an all-around amazing talent, and it's a shame that he wasn't in King Crimson longer because of, Robert Fripp always changing lineup. So, what a voice. So John Wetton, number 27. Number 26, master of metal himself in so many ways vocally, that is Rob Halford. And I got for Christmas a while back, that's a picture from his first biography, Confess. And I did read it, but there were some things that I kind of wish he would have left out because it's a little too personal. But I plowed through it, and you don't have to, but for me personally, as a straight man myself, I respect where he's coming from, being on the opposite side of the spectrum, and I respect him for coming out and being proud of who he is, and what a musical talent as well, vocally, and inspiring perhaps the first power metal vocalist of all time. If you take songs like Scream for Vengeance, where he's singing at a very high register, probably the highest, Painkiller comes next, I would say, his stuff in Fight. He even did a one-off with Trent Reznor, which I'm quite fond of. I love his solo stuff, Halford, especially the 2 live CDs, Live in Anaheim, and the other one, Live Insurrection, is my favorite live album of the 2. But yeah, from a character standpoint, someone who's not afraid to speak his mind and share in his biography, his love of music, his love of heavy metal. He is the metal god himself, and he's in his 70s now. And that last album was definitely inspiration, because at that age, normally you can't put out art that good. But hey, he did. He and the band, have to give kudos to the whole band for that album. But Rob is just a treasure, the metal god himself, as I said. So Rob Halford coming in at number 26. Number 25, can't forget about Rick Emmett. What a vocal talent. His vocal stylings is very similar to Geddy Lee, but a little bit more on the aesthetically pleasing side. I like Geddy Lee's voice very much, but there's something also majestical and fantastic and glorious about his vocal prowess. And if we talk about for a minute his guitar playing, I think Rick is such an underrated guitar player. When I listen to him, and I'm blown away by it's always an acoustic number on the album, or two, right? There's just masterpieces. There's these little etudes or short bursts of acoustic wonderfulness, if that's a word. And then he can play heavy like no one. He can play heavy, like no one else. He can play heavy guitar with the best of them, okay? With the best of them. Alex Lifeson included, Jimmy Page, you name it, Ritchie Blackmore. So he's not super high up the list, but 25. Vocal talent, amazing. His guitar chops, I remember watching the US Festival when I was in high school and just being blown away by the band. I think Triumph did the best, for me personally, even better than Judas Priest at the US Festival. So, and I'm a big Priest fan. So Triumph's Rick Emmett coming in at number 25. Number 24, Ken Hensley of Uriah Heep. As much as I like John Lord's talent and chops, and he's inspiring as well, but there's something even more magical about Ken Hensley. If you put on, if you were to take all the other instruments out and play something from him on his organ, and then put them side by side to John, you can tell who's who. There's a uniqueness to the way that Hensley plays, and also a guitarist, acoustic and electric, great writer, for the most part, a great songwriter. It's too bad he left the band right before Abominog, thereabouts, right after Conquest or thereabouts. But super inspirational, because when I there's a Wasp album, it's their fourth or fifth album, The Headless Children, I believe, and he plays on one of the songs of the album, and again, that organ is unmistakable. And it's that unmistakable sound, that tone, that vibe that you get from Ken that is just so inspirational that it just gives you goosebumps. It makes you want to just take it all in. So from a listening standpoint, super inspirational is his music, and of course in Uriah Heep. Next, Matt Pike of Sleep and High on Fire. Rising through the ranks of, I did a video not too long ago, Matt Pike and High on Fire is my third favorite heavy metal band of all time now. Wasn't always. It used to be, I don't know, somewhere in the top 20, 25. Number 3, that's a big deal for me. And he's rising up the ranks of being my favorite guitar player as well. I forgot where I'd put him recently. I don't know if I did a video on that. I don't think that, yeah, I did a long time ago, but I know he's moved up since then. That was one of my earlier videos, but I saw him live again with Sleep, with Al, and years ago in Knoxville, and just listening, it's the tone, his guitar tone, and his prowess. He's just an amazing talent. Just when I listen to Sleep, when I listen to High on Fire, I'm just amazed and I'm beside myself. Just great talent. Next. So Matt Pike was 23. Number 22 is Paul McCartney. And most of what we're dealing with here for me is the Beatles and some of his solo stuff. My two favorite songs solo-wise are Maybe I'm Amazed and My Love. But there are others. I love the Band on the Run album from start to finish. I love that live album, the triple live album, Wings Over America. It's amazing. Does some Beatles stuff there, right? But from a songwriter standpoint, from a work ethic standpoint, if it wasn't for Paul, and yeah, perhaps maybe pushing the other three members a bit too much, but as you know, if it wasn't for Paul, the Beatles would have folded a long time ago, even before Let It Be came out, right? So that hard work and that ethic can be a double-edged sword, but we have the music to enjoy because of that hard work ethic. And again, still going strong today, although his voice is not what it used to be, but hey, what's amazing also about Paul McCartney is a great bass player, right? In addition to that, love his ability to come up with amazing harmonies and melodies. And in addition to that, he can sing heavy, he can sing flowery, just a great vocal range in his own unique way. So love Paul McCartney. Number 22 is Paul McCartney. Number 21, K.K. Downing. I read his biography as well, Heavy Duty, when it first came out. Also got that as a gift, Christmas or birthday, from the same relative who gave me the Rob Halford Confessions biography. And I love his story about how he learned in the book, in the biography, autobiography, how he learned where all the notes are on his guitar and went from there, and growing up in Birmingham and just struggling. Talk about another person with an amazing work ethic. All of these do, but just a great work ethic, founding member of Judas Priest, and my favorite guitarist of Judas Priest, whether you're talking about Tipton, Sneap, or Faulkner. So just to me, he to me is the when I listen to Judas Priest, when he's still in the band, he's part and parcel the quintessential sound guitar-wise. Not to take away from what Tipton does. Tipton's one of my favorite guitar players of all time too, but I like KK that much more. So KK Downing coming in at 21. Number 20, David Byron. Great voice. No one else sounds like him. Lost him at a very young age, right, due to alcoholism and anxiety and stress and what have you. But when you listen to Uriah Heep when he's in the band, there's again something magical about him. About his delivery, his phrasing, his passion. If you listen to Paradise, The Spell, or Magician's Birthday, and July Morning, so many others, Rain, for example, those four come to mind right off the bat. Just overwhelmed by emotion. So from an inspirational standpoint, he just overwhelms me with emotion. So have to give props to David Byron coming number 20. Number 19, Chris Squire. As a bass player myself, this is someone who I aspire to. He is one of the masters of his craft, was one of the masters of his craft, still is, because we can still enjoy his music. And I love the Rickenbacker tone, right? Heart of the Sunrise, that trading off with Steve Howe at the beginning is just super inspirational. The stuff he does on Relayer, just the wonderful run that Yes has from, say, the Yes album through and including Relayer are just fabulous. I would count parts of Going for the One as well. So there you have it. Number 19, Chris Squire, just amazing. Number 18, going back to guitar player, Michael Schenker. When I first heard the song Rock Bottom, the first song I ever heard from them, I've told the story before, won't tell it again, but I was blown away and I was like, who is this? So I investigated, went out and got the album, and when you have someone who can play that guitar solo like Rock Bottom, and you think he's reached his final gear, nope, there's another gear. Nope, there's another gear. Nope, it just blows me away every time I hear it. And all the stuff he plays in UFO. I'm not a big fan of his solo stuff, but I do like some of it. And him dealing with his own personal demons, that's super inspiring as well. Have to keep going, that sort of thing. So Michael Schenker gets his due, coming in at number 18. Number 17, John McLaughlin. Stuff he does with Miles Davis, Mahavishnu Orchestra, solo stuff is good. Stuff he's done with Carlos Santana. Wow. Just a super, super talent. And his ability to play different styles. He can play heavy, right? He can play so many different ways. I guess my favorite would be what he does in Miles Davis. And then second would be almost a tie with Mahavishnu. I do like his solo, as I said, but that would be in third. Just an amazing talent. So 17, John McLaughlin. 16 is Jeff Tate of Queensryche. No one else sounds like Jeff Tate. What a vocal talent. You listen to Operation Mindcrime. You listen to Promised Land. You listen to Empire. You listen to Rage for Order. You listen to Warning. You listen to that first EP. He's not Rob Halford, but boy, is he close. Okay. And he's higher on my list than Rob. Judas Priest is in my top 10 favorite bands of all time. Queensryche is not. Rob Halford is a better singer than Jeff Tate is, I think. But Jeff Tate is higher in my list. Halford is 26. Jeff Tate is 16 because Jeff Tate, as a teenager and a young man in his 20s, inspired me from his songwriting. When you get songs like One More Time, when you get songs like, it's on the same album, Someone Else, those two songs that close, Promised Land, when you get all these closing tracks on all the albums from the debut, Lady Wore Black, through and including Promised Land, they just blow me away. And so from a lyric standpoint and a songwriting standpoint, I'm just like in awe from that perspective. So there's a little bit more cerebral stuff going on with the lyrics than there are, and the delivery of those lyrics didn't say with Judas Priest as much as I like Judas Priest. So that's the explanation why Jeff Tate is higher in the list as that paradox. Number 15, Dave Mustaine. I read his biography as well when it first came out years and years ago. There's this passage in the book where he talks about how he got literally on his knees and came back to God. And as a religious person myself, that spoke to me. We know that Dave can be grumpy but he's a family man. He loves his wife. He loves his children. He loves his music. And from a musical standpoint, some in heavy metal alone, some of the best lyrics, songs like Hook and Mouth, dealing with corrupt society. He just runs the gamut when it comes to trying to give us, even though it's heavy metal, give us some cerebral type lyrics. So that's inspiring as well. And let's face it, his guitar playing, Kerry King talks about in an interview how he doesn't understand how Dave can play his guitar and not look at what his hands are doing. So just an amazing, amazing guy. Not perfect character-wise, but have to respect him for his devotion to his family and his faith, and also to the craft that is the guitar. All right. That was 15. Number 14 is Ian Hunter. What can I say about Ian Hunter? Well, we talk about songwriting, whether arrangement, the music itself, plus the lyrics. He should be higher maybe. I like his arrangement, his production, his lyrics even more than I do. Elton John's not on this list. He could be, but he's not. Ian Hunter speaks to me in ways that Elton John just can't. And I love Elton John. I guess he would be top 35, top 40, but he's not in this list. But songwriting again, when you listen to songs, say on the Mod album, the All Young Dudes, his solo stuff like Artful Dodger, on Defiance Part 1, he has a song called Guernica, where he jumps into the shoes of Picasso and talks about why he did this painting. Just Why You I Orta, the album he did with Mick Ronson. Wow, it's just super inspiring. I know I'm saying that word a lot, but it is. I get goosebumps. I love to look at the lyrics sometimes when I'm listening to music. Sometimes I don't. Just want to take it all in and listen to what he has to say. It's just, he's a marvel. He's a treasure. That is Ian Hunter. All right, number 13, Ann Wilson. The greatest female voice in rock, if you ask me. Now, when it comes to Heart, I'm a huge fan of the first five albums, and then part of Bad Animals and part of the album just called Heart, and that's pretty much it. Some of the later stuff's okay, but part of what makes her so inspiring is when we were under lockdown with COVID, she did a video, reached out to her fans, and I don't remember what she said, but I remember thinking to myself, this person is genuine. This person is the real deal character-wise. This person cares about her fans, about music as a craft, about love of family. And she was saying something roughly along the lines about, yes, we're in this pickle with COVID and we're locked down and take care of yourselves, but it was about her reaching out. And so from that standpoint, with respect to character, with her musical genius, with her vocal talent, right? She can play the flute. I wish there was a little bit more of that. Songs like Mistral Wind, Barracuda, Crazy on You, and I'm missing an important one. Sing Child Sing, I believe, on the first album. That's when she pulls out the flute. There's videos of that online. Right? Oh, it's amazing. So Ann Wilson, What a Treasure as well, coming in at number 13. Number 12, Steve Marriott, Humble Pie, Small Faces. Guitar whiz. Underrated, if you ask me. His voice is very similar to Terry Reid's. They sound almost identical, at least to me. But as much as I like Terry Reid, Steve Marriott speaks to me and resonates with me more. When I listen to Humble Pie, I'm just so happy. When I listen to that Rockin' the Fillmore album from start to finish, always listen to it from start to finish, never skip a song, and I've listened to that album tons of times, always anticipating, that last track. You know what I'm talking about. Don't Need No Doctor. And I'm just super happy. It's just everything he does when he's in the band, up to a point that would be Eat It, and then after that, there's a falling off. These albums are marvels. These are just fabulous works of art. So, Steve Marriott, we miss you. You come in at number 12. Number 11, David Coverdale. Talk about a voice. Now, I've criticized David Coverdale, not on my channel, but in my brain, because there are so many songs with the word love in the title. Like on Slide It In, you have Victim of Love. Just call the song Victim. But that's a minor thing. What's inspiring about him is his vocal prowess when he had it, right? So we have that to enjoy still. And this is a man who is a romantic. He has so maybe too many, but so many songs of about love. How can you not respect that? How can you not get into that if you're a person who, understands the importance and value of love? So David Coverdale coming in at number 11. That stuff he did, Burn, Stormbringer, those two I think are, well, most people you talk to are Deep Purple fans like Burn. I think Stormbringer is underrated. An underrated masterpiece. So is Come Taste the Band. Just a marvel as well. All right. Number 10. Cracking the top 10 now is Tony Iommi. The godfather or grandfather of heavy metal. Super genius when it comes to coming up with riffs. In an interview, I don't know how long ago, I think it was in discussion of the new box set coming out, maybe, he said that he never had trouble coming up with riffs. And we get that. Just, again, amazing talent. It's too bad things didn't work out with Ozzy after those two duds, Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. But it is what it is. We still have a lot to enjoy from Tony. Some of the stuff with Tony Martin I like Tear and Headless Cross. A couple songs on Cross Purposes, not much on Forbidden. But if it wasn't for Tony, you would not have doom metal. That third album, Master Reality, is the beginning of that, although we didn't call it that. So, stuff he did with Dio, amazing. Tony Iommi, number 10. Number 9, speaking of Black Sabbath, Ronnie James Dio. Whether you're talking about his time in Rainbow, his time in Black Sabbath, his solo work, as far as that goes, first two albums are great. Lock Up the Wolves is very good. Strange Highways is very good. And Killing the Dragon. Those are my favorite. Rest of it, not so much for me. First three albums of the Rainbow, especially those first two, are masterpieces. maybe half of Long Live Rock and Roll. Couple Elf songs, not much, but those three Black Sabbath albums, Mob Rules, Heaven and Hell, and Dehumanizer. If Iommi is the godfather or grandfather of heavy metal, Ronnie James Dio is the wizard of heavy metal, or thereabouts. His fantasy-themed lyrics, he said in an interview years and years ago when I was a teenager in high school that he would come up with these lyrics while he's watching a football game or baseball game, or I think it was football. And just something majestic. No one sounds like him. Super missed by us fans. And when you heard his voice, you knew who it was, because like I said, no one else sounds like Ronnie. Inspiring from his vocal talent, his writing talent, songwriting talent, and his willingness, like Steve Hackett, to when things are not working out with the band, to do his own thing. And while some of it worked, some of it didn't, have to respect that. So Ronnie James Dio, we miss you, coming in at number 9. Number 8, John Paul Jones. The heart and soul of the band, some have said. Maybe not the brain. The brain was Jimmy, of course. But he can play the guitar. He can play the bass. He got what is that guitar? He's got a mandolin, a guitar, and a bass on there maybe? Or 2 guitars and a mandolin? Renaissance man he is. As again, play organ, keyboards, piano, bass, of course, mandolin. He would launch into parts of Rachmaninoff during live versions when they would go 3.5-hour set, right? If it wasn't for John Paul Jones, you would not have gotten songs like Carousel Alhambra and other amazing tracks that are on In Through the Outdoor, because that is essentially a John Paul Jones, Robert Plant album, because Jimmy Page was dealing with some issues and Bonham as well. So, and it shows. But he's a Renaissance man. He's so underrated. He's the last person people talk about when we talk about Led Zeppelin, not me. He's always in the conversation. All 4 of them are, because without any of those 4 members, including John Paul Jones, Led Zeppelin would not have been Led Zeppelin. All right, number 8. Number 7, Ritchie Blackmore. Yeah, he could be a hothead. We know the story of California Jam 1974. He wanted to wait till it got dark so the light show would be the way he wanted it to be, but the band finished early. He locks himself in his dressing room. They said, we're going to call the cops. ABC said they were going to call the cops because this is on live television. So he comes out eventually, although he put up a fight at first. And, of course, he destroys his guitar and the amps at the end and sets them on fire. So we get that he was difficult to work with. But I have to respect him wanting the best performance, in this case for that night in 1974. I'm 6 years old. I didn't know about it back when it first happened, years later. But from a classical standpoint, that classical trained style of guitar, there are days when Jimmy Page is up here above Ritchie being my favorite. Lately, last 5 or 6 years, it's been Ritchie all the way. I did a video on my favorite guitarists. Check it out. Shameless plug. But Ritchie Blackmore, from guitar player standpoint, is just an amazing talent. And without him, you perhaps would not have had the Shrapnel Records era of guitar, instrumentals, and what have, the Jason Beckers, the Marty Friedmans, the Yngwies, right? All that, although Yngwie wasn't on Shrapnel. So you get my point, hopefully. Ritchie Blackmore coming in at number 7. Number 6, Jimmy Page. So while Ritchie Blackmore, in my favorites, is above Jimmy, when we talk about inspiration, Jimmy's underneath, as I said, Ritchie from favorites, but Jimmy is more inspiring to me than Ritchie. Because when I listen to Stairway to Heaven, just as one example, never gets old, That is an inspirational song in and of itself, from the opening guitar notes to the end of the song when it gets heavy, and everything in between, and the lyrics about hope, about faith, about changing your path in life. So inspirational. And there are other songs that are inspirational as well. Achilles' Last Stand comes to mind. That's more of a Robert Plant thing with his broken ankle, but you get my point. So, and I perhaps would not have... I discovered Led Zeppelin first before Deep Purple, listening to the music. So I have to put Jimmy Page, because Jimmy Page, perhaps I would not have grown fond of Ritchie Blackmore had it not been for Jimmy. So Jimmy Page gets the edge here, number 6, excuse me. Number 5, the drum maestro himself, Neil Peart, my favorite drummer of all time. We talk from a personal standpoint. He loses a wife and he loses a daughter within 6 months, back in the 90s. He rebounds. He goes on his year and a half or whatever long quest to find himself and deal with his loss. He comes back. He remarries. Right? He keeps going. We thought the band would not come back. It does. So, like I've said already, the desire to continue on, the desire to carry on. Okay? He's not with us anymore, but we have the treasure of music that he gave us. And what's also inspiring is, from a lyrics standpoint, we get the drumming, but from a lyrics standpoint, if you just look at the lyrics, even the albums I don't like, the lyrics are still amazing. They may not be as good, or as amazing rather, than the earlier, heavier stuff, but they're very close. So props to Neil Peart for his amazing... The last time I saw him do anything was when he was on David Letterman, and that was years and years ago. This is before he died. So talk about a great work ethic, a family man, loved his family, loved Geddy and loved Alex because they were family as well, even though he was the new guy, right? So, yeah, I can get a little misty-eyed when it comes to Neil. And this is how I like to remember him, with the long hair and the Doug Henning handlebar mustache. So Neil coming in at number 5. Oh, I was trying to say the lyrics, I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend, and I've spoken about that already. Number 4 is Miles Davis. Want to be a rock star. He did, and he fulfilled it. Check out, I've said this before, check out the CD Bitches Brew Live, or look at it, the Isle of Wight Festival on YouTube. You can watch the whole show. Biggest crowd ever turned out for Miles in the band. You have Keith Jarrett in the band at this time. Love Keith Jarrett. But if we stick to Miles, someone who changes direction, going from that early style of jazz in the 50s and 60s to more heavy, having guitar players who shred. You know, John McLaughlin comes to mind. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the 2 guys who play in Pangea and Agartha in Japan, they're amazing talents as well. Just so many talents coming in and out. Inspiring not because of his music ability, but also because, like I said earlier, he was a mentor for band members who go off on their own. And he said, and this is inspiring in and of itself, he said, the reason members come and go is because he's got to let them go break their own new ground and become a success story on their own. And also it's how his band grows and how he grows as a musician. And you can argue the opposite, of course. It depends, and I get that. So I respect him. What's also inspiring about Miles is having read his biography, his autobiography, and talking about, as a lot of us know who are Miles Davis fans, he had sickle cell anemia. And so to deal with the extraordinary pain, he started taking heroin to deal with the pain. And of course, that replaced one problem with another. And reading about how the suffering he had to go through to kick that habit and the pain that he had to suffer to get through that was inspiring as well. So Miles Davis' ability to take his trumpet, make it electric, use wah-wah, branch off into heavier waters, jazz funk, right? Jazz careful here. Jazz, kind of metalish, because if you look at that Bitches Brew Live footage, he's shredding on trumpet. It's just fabulous. So Miles Davis coming in number 4. Number 3, David Bowie. He is my favorite solo artist of all time. He is the chameleon. So many different phases in his career. The Thin White Duke, Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, his earlier stuff, his later stuff where he's, more into the colored suits, getting the long hair back, his 80s material before that with the Stevie Ray Vaughan. He has kind of a resurgence later in his career with those 3, I call it a trilogy. It's Reality, Heathen, and Hours. Those are amazing. So from an inspirational standpoint, for me personally, something he said was, if you're in art, specifically music, I've said this before, that he says you have to not play to the gallery and do your own thing. So that's Steve Hackett. That's, some of these I've mentioned already today. So I get excited whenever I think about, hey, I'm going to listen to Bowie today, or I'm going to listen to Bowie soon, in the next few minutes. I just got the box set Rock and Roll Star, which is a 5 CD set on the Ziggy Stardust album, which I'm going to do a review, but I have to listen to the 5 CDs first. So that's, in the works down the road, a couple weeks, maybe a month from now. We'll see. But yeah, Bowie's just, for me personally, some people cite Prince as their favorite solo artist of all time, or Madonna, or, fill in the blank. For me, Lou Reed comes to mind. For me, it's David Bowie. Number 2, no surprise here, folks. Geddy Lee, my favorite bass player of all time. Some people will not like this, but it's just my opinion. Geddy Lee was inspired by Chris Squire, and I think that with regards to Chris Squire, Geddy Lee is the student who becomes the master. No offense to the wonderful Chris Squire. Chris Squire, you would not have Geddy Lee were it not for Chris Squire. There's a palette that Geddy uses that's even broader, if you can believe that, than what Chris used. So, and I read Geddy's biography as well, not that long, a couple months ago, I guess. It took me a while to finish it. And from a personal standpoint, growing up as a young Jewish boy and dealing with, all the family history of his mom and dad, being in Auschwitz and persecuted, and his grandmother, and how they got married after they were liberated by the Russians, right? Just an amazing story, one of hope and inspiration, that good can come out of suffering. As bad as suffering is, we understand that you have to keep going, is what I mean. Again, the theme here today, right? So read the biography if you haven't. So Geddy Lee's inspiring because of his personal life and dealing with persecution growing up, dealing with his own problems. Again, read the biography. His struggles as a husband, because he's always on the road, have to admire wanting to deal with that, his lovely wife and that sort of thing, having kids of his own and wanting to be there as a father. Also a big baseball collector, big collector of bass guitars, right? Don't have that book, but also inspiring because of his unique voice talent and his unique, his unique talent, and just an all-around Renaissance guy. When it comes from him, he is a workaholic in a good way, and he, talking about his biography again, never wanted to settle for second best when it came to the production and the engineering, always taking an interest in the mixing board and the production and the engineering alongside Terry, after all, and then doing his own thing with his solo album with Ben Mink and that sort of thing. So all-around Renaissance man, very similar to John Paul Jones, not just because he's a bass player. And as you probably figured, number 1 is Alex Lifeson. While I rather play the bass guitar than the electric guitar, my favorite instrument to listen to is the electric guitar. And again, I've talked about this before, when you listen to the Pink Pop Festival version, but more importantly, the Exit Stage Left version of La Via Strangiato, when he launches into that solo at the 3-minute mark, goosebumps. I've never heard the guitar cry like that ever. oh, I never heard the guitar cry like that before, and I don't think I ever will again. That white guitar, that Gibson that he's holding in this picture, looks a lot like the Gretsch that Billy Duffy but it's not a Gretsch, of the Cult has. That's usually the guitar he plays when he plays La Villa, the thin hollow body, a Gibson. In the Pink Pop, it's the sunburst one, the dark sunburst. But Alex Lifeson, yeah, inspired by Cream and Led Zeppelin on that first album, very derivative, as Geddy says. But as some people say, Alex Lifeson stops becoming Jimmy Page around Hemispheres. I disagree. I think he stops sounding like Jimmy Page more around 2112. There's a hint of it, but even in Caress of Steel, and Fly By Night, there's less of that Jimmy. There's elements of Jimmy Page, especially on By Torn the Snow Dog, the live version on All the World's a Stage. But overall, it's more Alex than it is Jimmy. And again, you're going to be influenced by others, and then you're going to, come into your own as your own person. And I think Alex came out of that Jimmy Page style, that Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton stylings much quicker than people give him credit for. But overall, he's my favorite guitar player. There's something unique about the way he plays. He lends, even though others do it, in certain songs, especially Caress of Steel and YYZ, there's an Arabic blend in the tone and vibe of his guitar tone. There's in his ability to write things. I talked about how Tony Iommi never has problems coming up with riffs. Well, to me, it seems like Alex never has problems coming up with riffs or solos. So, just an amazing talent. All of these 30 choices are amazing talents. So, Alex Lifeson, my favorite guitarist, the most inspirational musician of all time for me personally. He has had his own struggles as well, of course. Poor health recently, or last couple years, and Geddy talks about that a little bit in his biography. And how can you not like the guy with the sense of humor that he has? So here you go, folks. These are my most inspiring musicians of all time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care now. Bye-bye.